Former Zambian President Edgar Lungu is said to be laid to rest today in Hillbrow, that's in Johannesburg, with a private family ceremony also planned. The funeral arrangements, though, come amid ongoing disputes between the Zambian government, including the expulsion of President Hakainde Hichilema. Now, Lungu died back in June, in fact, this month, on the 5th of June in Pretoria, at the age of 68 from cardiac complications during surgery after undergoing specialized medical treatment. Let's get the very latest on what we know so far. SABC News senior reporter Griselda Lewis is live to us now from the Christ the King Cathedral in Hillbrow. And Griselda, we've just gotten word that the judge sitting in the High Court in Pretoria has granted permission for the media to film the litigation around this interdict from the Zambian government. And of course, I imagine many people there will also be watching that very closely.
Well, absolutely, Ayanda. A dramatic turn of events, as you correctly pointed out. The former Zambian President Edgar Lungu passing away on the 5th of June here in South Africa at the age of 68. Well, the funeral service is expected, if at all it does go ahead, to take place here at the Cathedral of Christ the King in Hillbrow here in Johannesburg. But now there are questions about whether the burial will go ahead. Zambia's Attorney General, as you would know, has filed a public interest lawsuit in the Gauteng division of the High Court in Pretoria, and the suit is directed against members of the late president's family and two other individuals, seeking an interim court order to prevent the burial of the former President Lungu to take place here in South Africa. So the Attorney General, from what we've seen, requests that no burial take place until all disputes regarding Dr. Lungu's final resting place are resolved, specifically, according to those papers, whether he should be interred in Zambia with full military honors, customs and traditions as mandated by Zambia law and in keeping with public interest. So in his application, the Attorney General contends that a state funeral for the former Zambian head of state is a formal public event governed by strict military protocols and intended to honor individuals of national significance. So you would know, of course, that former President Lungu was the 6th president of Zambia, who'd led his country from 2015 until 2021, and he had been receiving treatment here in South Africa. Lungu had lost, you would recall, the 2021 election to the current president and his arch rival, as many have described, Hakainde Hichilema, by a large margin. And in 2017, when former President Lungu was still president, he had Hichilema locked up for over 100 days on treason charges after Hichilema's motorcade allegedly refused to give way for him. So it took the intervention of the Commonwealth, you'd recall at the time, Ayanda, for President Hichilema to be released. 4 years later, and after 5 attempts at the presidency, the now President Hichilema defeated Lungu. This was in 2021. So according to the former President Lungu's immediate family, the former president had basically left instructions that President Hichilema, his long-standing rival, should not come anywhere near his body. In a statement, the Lungu family said, he'll be laid to rest here in South Africa in accordance with their wishes, and the family said that this period was emotional and they were grateful for the support and condolences extended from across the continent and the globe. And they also basically thanked the government of South Africa for their support and for honoring the family's decision to hold a private funeral and burial here in South Africa. But as you can see here behind me, while you have this court challenge, which is expected to start any moment now in the High Court in Pretoria, where the Zambian government basically wants an interdict preventing this funeral from taking place, this funeral service from taking place. Preparations are well underway here behind me. Flowers have already been put on parts of the church, and there are some mourners already that have arrived here at the church. But how the court challenge, whatever the outcome may be, will affect what is expected to take place here today is certainly something that remains to be seen. You recall that President Hichilema, on the other hand, had said that the Lungu family had refused to engage him and his team the day that the former president, Lungu, had passed away, and that he did not want to announce the former president's passing without engaging the family first. Recall that also been criticism about why he didn't almost immediately say anything to the nation about the passing of the former president. And President Hichilema says that once the Lungu family made a public announcement on the former president's passing, he says he then took it that was the official word, the official confirmation of the passing of the former president. So, Ayanda, I'd also read over the past couple of days some reports that spoke about, a feud between the two that couldn't even be ended by death. And certainly that's what we're seeing unfold, taking place in the High Court in Pretoria, where my colleague Kani Mapanga is. She'll be watching those proceedings very closely to see what the court's ruling will be with this challenge from the Zambian government not wanting this burial of the former head of state of Zambia, Edgar Lungu, to go ahead. But here at the church in Hillbrow, there are already flowers and some mourners that have already arrived. So we'll certainly have to wait and see what takes place. As you correctly pointed out, we're expecting the funeral service to start at 11 o'clock this morning, but anything can happen between now and 11 o'clock. As my colleague Kani Mapanga told me a few minutes before we went to air, that court proceedings were scheduled to start any moment now. So we'll certainly have to wait and see what the court says about this and whether this funeral service will go ahead. In fact, the visuals that you're also seeing on our screen are of those court proceedings. As I indicated, my colleague Kani Mapanga is there. Whatever happens inside that court will determine whether this funeral service does go ahead. We know that those papers were filed by the Attorney General of Zambia, and it's basically against the family, wanting to interdict the family from going ahead with this funeral service. So whatever happens, what decision is taken inside that court is going to determine whether the funeral service does take place right here behind me.
Absolutely. And Griselda, it's an incredibly striking visual that we're actually showing to our viewers, because so many of those who are gathered inside the courtroom in the gallery are clad in what seems to be, the kind of attire you'd wear for a funeral. So you really get the sense that they too, if this goes their way, will move straight from this courtroom to where you are at the Christ the King Cathedral in Hillbrow.
Well, that's right, Ayanda. In fact, in preparation for today's live proceedings, I did speak to one of the individuals who is mentioned in those papers that were filed by the Attorney General of Zambia. And instead of the people that you're seeing inside that courtroom now being here at the church in Hillbrow to prepare for the start of the funeral service at 11 o'clock this morning, they've now had to go to those court proceedings in Pretoria. So whatever happens there, Ayanda, is certainly going to affect, as I indicated, what happens next. If it goes their way, they will certainly make their way to this church in order to begin the process of burying Zambia's former head of state. You would know, of course, while we are here at the church, we do understand that the burial itself is scheduled to be a private affair, but it'll be very interesting to see what arguments are placed inside that court. As I indicated, SABC News also has that covered. My colleague Kani Mapanga is there. She's covering those court proceedings. She'll let us know as soon as we do have an outcome at what the arguments are, exactly which way possibly this court ruling may go. But we'll wait here at the church to certainly see what happens next. Some of the mourners have arrived, even those who have brought the flowers, who you could possibly see, that you could possibly see behind me. The flowers have been brought in. There are just a few mourners here. We're expecting many more to be in attendance, but I guess everybody has wind also. Large interest I've also seen on social media from the media in Zambia, as well as Zambians in general, who've already tweeted at me, to voice their concerns or whatever their views are on what is taking place. But certainly, what we've seen as what had been a feud between the two, the current president, Hichilema, and the late Edgar Lungu. As I said, some reports that I've read over the past couple of days since the passing of the former head of state, some are even saying that it's a feud that couldn't even be buried, or the hatchet could not be buried even in death. So it's going to be very interesting to see what unfolds both in the High Court in Pretoria and here at the church in Hillbrow.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we let you go, Griselda, as we wait for these proceedings to get underway in Pretoria, the Christ the King Cathedral, for people who don't know, is a Catholic church, and typically there's what's called a requiem mass that happens. And I'm only mentioning that because there's, very strict kind of rituals that are done during the service itself. It's a very roundabout way of asking the question about whether we know if anybody will speak from the family today there. Has there been any kind of program, for example, that's been shared if this funeral does go ahead?
Well, Ayanda, I have not seen a program, and I would only imagine whatever happens or whatever ruling is made at the High Court in Pretoria, certainly sentiment will be shared about what has transpired. Because on a video that I had seen from the sitting president, the current president in Zambia, President Hichilema, he basically tried to dispel any notion that even in a moment of mourning, there'd been some sort of ongoing feud on his part. As I indicated a little bit earlier on in this crossing to you, in a video that I had seen, he'd basically spoken about how he wanted to engage with the Lungu family on the day of the former president's passing, and he says that the Lungu family did not want to engage with him. Instead, what happened was that there was a public announcement that was made about the former head of state's passing, and that was only when he took it as official confirmation of what had transpired. So I can only but imagine, and I beg your pardon, I might not understand Zambian laws very well, but in a situation like that, if you have a head of state or former head of state that has passed away, there would need to be someone very senior in government. In this instance, the president announcing the passing of a former head of state, basically informing the nation and informing the world. I beg your pardon if I might be wrong in that instance if we talk about Zambia and how that is supposed to happen, but from what I gauged from what the sitting president, the current president of Zambia, said was that his hands had basically been tied because there had been criticism about why he kept quiet. So in that video, he seems to suggest that his hands were tied. He did not want to announce anything to the nation and to the world on the basis that he wanted to engage the Lungu family first. And he says that was not forthcoming. And only once a public announcement had been made by the Lungu family, he took that as official confirmation about what had transpired about the demise of the former president Edgar Lungu. So there's quite a lot that has been happening behind the scenes, and many have drawn to what we've seen in the past relating to the relationship between the two, what has happened, some of which I've already mentioned to you, and from some of the tweets that I've also seen from Zambians after I tweeted last night about this court challenge by the Attorney General in Zambia. Many are saying, bury the hatchet, let him just be laid to rest. Is the family well within its rights to decide whether he should be buried in South Africa, especially in light of the wishes of the former president Edgar Lungu, in which we've come to understand was that he did not want the current president of Zambia anywhere near his body or anywhere near a service in the event that he had passed on. That has now happened. So I think the courts will be the ultimate arbiter in terms of what happens next. We'll certainly take our cue from whatever decision is taken there. And unfortunately at this particular stage, because everyone of interest, perhaps who might be able to speak on this matter, Ayanda, are at the High Court in Pretoria, where my colleague Kani Mapanga is. I do understand this morning, from a conversation I had this morning with some of those that have been designated to speak to the media, that they might possibly, in fact they will, address the media at the High Court in Pretoria once there is a decision on this matter, and that will certainly pave the way forward in terms of what happens next.
All right, Griselda Lewis is our senior reporter, live to us there from the Christ the King Cathedral in Johannesburg. Griselda, thanks very much indeed for breaking it down for us. We're still keeping a very close eye, of course, on the situation in the High Court in Pretoria. And I wonder if we can just bring up those visuals as we once again get our viewers up to speed with what we know so far and perhaps what is to come. The Attorney General from Zambia is suing Edgar Lungu's family. In fact, he is suing specifically several members of the Lungu family, including former First First Lady Esther Lungu, 4 of Lungu's children, along with the family lawyer, that's Makebi Zulu, as well as the company that's running the morgue where Lungu's remains have been kept. The Attorney General is seeking an interim court order to prevent this burial until all disputes regarding the former president's final resting place are resolved, and that has to do specifically with whether he should be interred in Zambia with full military honors, the customs, the traditions, as well as everything else that comes with that, as per the law in Zambia and in keeping with public interest. But the dispute, of course, cannot just be reduced to today's litigation. We know that this funeral dispute is just the latest flashpoint in a decades-long political battle between Edgar Lungu and Hakainde Hichilema, which dates back several years. As I mentioned, it has to do with elections that were tightly won by Edgar Lungu in 2015. In 2017, Hichilema was arrested and charged with treason. There was a transition of power that had to happen in 2021. When Hichilema won the elections decisively, Lungu, in fact, initially accused the process of being unfair, but later conceded a few days after that. And there were tensions even, post his presidency, post 2021, where Lungu had repeatedly accused Hichilema of harassing him using state institutions. Hichilema also at some stage taking action against judges that were seen as pro-Lungu. So it's not just, any kind of conflict. It's involved contested elections, there've been arrests, there've been court battles and accusations. And frankly, this funeral dispute is just the latest chapter in this ongoing clash. We'll keep a very close eye on the situation for you. As soon as proceedings get underway in the High Court in Pretoria, we'll certainly take you there live.